Hi everybody, glad you're here. Today we're going to be doing this cute little Santa's helper elf, and it's done in watercolor with a bokeh background. It's fairly simple. I'll give you step by step, so I hope you'll give it a go. And I do have a traceable for you that you can download, and it is available in the members community page. If you look, there will be a link for you to download it and print it. So if you see, there's quite a bit of texture in this one, and that is salt. So I'm going to show you how we can do that. There is no frisket in this. It's all done with, the whites are done with gouache. So I'll show you how to put in the snow effect, and the bokeh is actually done with a bit of gouache also. So you'll be needing some salt, some white gouache. If you don't have white gouache, you can use white acrylic. It'll work just as well. And a black fine liner or pen, and that's for the eyelashes, so they're very fine. I'll be using today alizarin crimson, or if you have a cad red, that will work also. I have raw sienna, burnt umber, cobalt blue, greens, which is Daniel Smith Green Apatite Genuine, or if you have a olive of some sort, we can darken it a little with a bit of umber. And what else? Some Payne's Gray or Indigo would work also. We'll be needing some of that. And some Henza Yellow. Now, you don't have to do your background identically like this. You can do yours any color you want. Mine is done basically with the green, yellow, and I did put a little bit of red over top after I dried it the first time. I'll show you how I did that. Yeah, basically that's all you need. Oh, I did do the bells in rose color that Zandra gave me, rose gold. If you've got a gold, you can do them in that, or silver, whatever you want to do. And this is done on 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. So get your stuff ready, and we'll have fun doing this one. Alright everybody, let's get started and do this painting. I hope you have all your supplies ready, and you've either got this up on a screen or you've downloaded and printed it out. The links are in the members stream where I post everything. There'll be a link with the downloadable and this one also for a downloadable, so you can use it either when I'm doing it or on your own. So I'm just going to put this to the side, trying to get this all in here so you can see what I'm doing. I don't have a second camera. Actually, I don't really need to have it when I'm doing the background. Now, the background we're going to be doing first. You don't have to do this color combination. You can do whatever color you want. Just keep in mind, though, of the color of her hat, the leaves, and her suit. So if you're going to be painting yours in, say, a blue or something, you're not going to want to put a blue in this area in the background, unless it's either very light than what you have here or really dark. Maybe I'll do blue, yellow, and a touch of crimson maybe. Just experiment. You could do this on a separate piece of paper if you want to just try to do something a little different. And all I do is I take, this is a number 8. You could take a 10 or a 12, whatever you want to use. I'm just going to wet areas. So you want to wet the area that is in the background, but try and stay away from the clothes, the face, the hat. We don't want to go on top of that. We just want to do the area around the elf. And you can just do bits at a time too, because by the time you go over all of this with water, you'd probably have to go over it again because it'd be dry. Now, I'm going to go into her body a little bit and in between her arms here. So you want to see a sheen on your paper. Okay, so I just have this done. So I'm going to, this is the pom-pom, so it's going to be white. So don't necessarily want the white to be there, so maybe I'll do green to keep it going. So I have this nice permanent sap green from Winsor & Newton. You want it fairly watery. Make a bunch of it up. So I think I'm going to do that. And maybe you can do a couple greens if you want. Let's do this Daniel Smith Green Apatite Genuine. So I'm just going to do it in this here. Make a good assortment of it. And we can add more water to it. Now let's do a yellow or gold, whatever you want. How about, let's see, I have Henza yellow here. So we'll put a bunch of that in there. We can change the color. Nothing says you have to stick with that color. And I said blue. Now we could do a cerulean blue, or we could do a cobalt teal. I'm going to stick with cerulean blue just to keep it on the safe side. So I'm just going to put it here. A fair amount. So you don't want to run out in between your colors. And I said a quin magenta would be nice. So let's put a quin magenta in here. So let's see, that's by Winsor Newton. Nice quin magenta. It's fairly strong color. Alright, so let's make sure that this is still wet. I can still see a shine on it, so that's good. And because that's white, I'm going to put green in here. So let's get this, and I'm just going to swipe it around. I think I want it more dark on the corners. And then I'm going to take some of this yellow, just dab it in. Maybe some of this, a little bit different a color. So we don't want it too light around this poof of her hat, a little pom-pom. Put a little in there between her arms. Okay, so I'm going to just continue up and just lightly put water around all the objects, her ear and hat here. And maybe, let's see, maybe it goes into a nice blue in here. You can take it down into the green a little bit if you want. Maybe add a few dabs here and there. And maybe a little bit more green in there. Just play. Doesn't have to be anything special. Once it dries, it'll dry lighter. Just keep that in mind. So you want fairly thick paint, or else you're going to have to go over it again. I love that yellow, how it travels. I'm going to throw some of this in it. Now I'm not going close to the hat because that's red. Let's put some blue in here. So this is around the white part of the hat, the fluff. So I'm just trying to stay out of that white area of the hat. So I don't want it to get, I'm going to put this out of the way so I don't get it dirty. Maybe a little bit more blue in here, some yellow. A bit of green up in the corner. Some darker green around the edge in here. Just because I know that this is going to be white. Maybe a little bit more blue in the here. Turns green once you put it in the yellow. I need to get some more of that mixed. I'm running out already. Maybe a little bit of blue in where her arm is. And that's going to be red there, so I don't want any red there. So let's put more blue in here. Her face, I'm going to throw some red down here. I think I'll put green. I just want to go around her little face really carefully because I don't want that green to go in there. Her skin color is very fair. Go around their nose. Now, because she's very fair, you want maybe a little bit darker color around her face, so her face will show up. So let's add a little bit more blue in here. Maybe some yellow. Just put some more yellow in there. Let's see, more green, I think, darker. Especially around her nose. Alright. And then you can pick it up and just let it run. It's not going to go where there isn't any water. So let her run around, drip. And it makes nice textures in your watercolor when you do that. Okay, so now I'm going to take some salt. I've got table salt here. You can get sea salt, whatever you want. Before this gets too dry, you don't want to put it in puddles because it won't do much on puddles. But where it's just starting to lose its sheen, just don't put a whole lot because less is more actually with the salt. So just place some salt on those areas that are just starting to lose its sheen. You can take a brush, and if you got pools of water, you can just sop them up with a damp brush along the bottom here. Because if you leave them, they can run back and you'll get blooms. But the way I look at it, in the background, especially when you're using salt, blooms are fine. Sometimes you even want blooms because it looks cool. So I'm just going to sop up a little bit of this here. A few puddles. And where else? All right. So just checking. Now with you, when you're doing this, you don't want to use your heat gun or your hair dryer. You have to let it dry on its own. This is why I made it a video, because it's going to take a while for this to dry. Now I'm only using 190 pound, or not, 140 pound watercolor paper. So it's going to take a little while to dry. So just leave it, set it aside, and we'll be back real soon. Alrighty, so I have my paper dry. As you can see, there's some really nice salt marks. Not on all of it. Notice up here, this was drier. It had a very, very faint sheen to it when I put the salt on. And as you can see, there's hardly any kind of salt patterns. So now what I want to do is I'm going to just wipe the salt off. So there's our, got a little bit, not a whole lot on the top there. So what I did for the background is I put another layer of paint on top and did another application of the salt, basically. So you can put this, either the same colors in the same areas, or you can mix it up. So if you know your color combinations, you'll know that if you put this reddish pink color over yellow, it's going to go more into an orange. Same with if you use red and green, you're going to get into more of a darker brown color. So keep that in mind when you're going to do it, or you don't have to. We'll put the circles, the bokeh part, in it once we're done. So I think I'm going to make up a little bit of my colors here. I'm going to use the same colors. So let's see what we can do here. Maybe I want a little bit more blue in this area here. Now blue and pink make purple. Let's put a little bit of blue over that pink in some areas. We'll add a little more blue in here, but I'm going to add some of it over the pink and probably in the corner here, just to darken this up a little bit. And maybe some quin, maybe over here. If you want to spray it with a bottle, you could do that too. Maybe some green, more green in here. I'm going to make it a little bit darker right in here around her nose. And even though it's green on green, if it's darker, when you put the salt on it, it actually shows what was behind it. It's kind of cool. Just take those rough lines out. You don't want really hard lines in your painting. Okay, before that, I think I need some green in here. Okay, I'm going to put some salt on that before I forget. We'll see what we get. More in here. Down here, a little more green. And more red in here maybe. More in there. Some yellow. I don't want any hard lines. That's the only thing I don't want. Let's take out some of those hard lines if there is any, with just some plain water. Okay, so I'll sprinkle some more in here. We'll see what we get. Let that dry. So this is why it takes a while. And we'll let that dry. See you in a bit. So what I have here now, as you can see, there's a little bit more. Depends on how much you put on. You can do layer after layer after layer. It's up to you how much salt texture you want. Now we're not going to do the bokeh yet. I always do that last because I want to go over top of parts of the image also when I do the bokeh. as you can see here. I've gone over here in her arm and here, part of her hat. So now we're going to start off with her face. Yeah, I think her face starts first. So you want to have a clean palette when you're doing this. Just because of her color of skin that I've done here, it's very fair. So you don't want to muddy it up. So get your palette nice and clean. And the mixing of the colors for the skin is very simple. It's only 2 to 3 colors. You can change it up by adding one color more than the other. So depending on your skin tone you want to do, it's up to you. So all we do is we mix a little bit of a sienna color. So raw sienna or ochre, either one will do. So I've got raw sienna here. And I like to put a little bit of red in it. So if you have a cad red or quin red, either one of those will do. Scarlet Lake sometimes is nice. Here's some Scarlet Lake. And you just mix a little bit of that into your, and it turns this kind of grayed down orange color. And then you can either add a little blue to gray it. Just a pinch. That was the cerulean blue. So it turns into this kind of dusty rose, I guess you could say. Now if you want a little more on the sienna, you could add more sienna to it. But I like it kind of this more of a brownish pink, I guess you could say. Now, if you notice in the painting here, she has a shadow under her chin and down the back of her neck and inside her ear, down the crease in her ear here, and around the top fur part. So you can put those in first. I know that's kind of weird. Usually in watercolor you start with the lightest and then go to the darkest, but I just like to put it doesn't have to be dark either, because we'll put many layers on. But you want just a little bit of color to show where all that shadow is. There's a little bit under her lip here. Just go to the little crease and around that mark on her nose. And I like to go on the top of the lip too. And the lip is also darker, so you can add that on our lip. So I'm using the same color. And then around her ear, there's this little like crescent moon just in front of this here. And the inside of her ear. And it'll just show you where the shadows are. It won't be that dark once it dries, but it shows you where those shadows are. So it helps you remember where you need shadows and where the highlights are. Also in here, just in between that leaf and her ear, there'll be some there. And there's a little crease on the top of her nose too, just like that. And then from that crease, go up to her eye. And around. Don't go inside her eye though, just around the eye. And just on the there's a little bit of an eyelid there, just on the eyelid. And then just dab around her fluffy part of her hat, just underneath it, like that. And just a little bit around the tops of the bells, where her collar is. That's also dark. And let's see, in here, she's got some darkness. A little bit along the bottom here. So it just gives you a little bit to show where you're kind of mapping things out, I guess you could say. So then you take a clean brush with clean water, and you can, if you've got some hard lines, just go along the edge of those hard lines and walk them out a little bit. It's just little steps at a time. So it's still very light. You're going to put more color on there. But at least you know where the main dark areas are going to be. So just take a look at that. Now, I like to put then, once I have all of this on, you're going to probably think this is kind of weird, but this is the way you train your eye to see shadows and highlights. So I know there's a highlight on the outside tip of her nose, on the outer edge of her lip, and on her forehead going down along her eye here. But I need to make this color here, the skin color, the lightest part of the whole thing. So I'm going to take a little bit of that sienna color and mix it, make a little bit more on the golden color, I guess. There's still a lot of water in there, and I'm just going to put a light wash. Takes water and then just feed it into those other areas. Her nose is fairly light, but you still want some color on there. We can always lift too. Now her ear, I'm going to put this kind of, it's very, very, it's so light. I have a bit of green I don't want on there. So I'm just going to rub that back and forth. Try and get it up. And then I'm going to put it in here. If there's any hard edges, get rid of them. You don't want to see those. This is a pearl in her ear. Now you can make it whatever you want. And then this top part of her head. I'm not going to rub that edge off because it'll be a shadow from the fur, so it'll be a little bit stronger looking. It'll be more of a definite color. So wherever there's some hard lines that shouldn't be there, you can walk them out. Not going to worry about there. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry. And while that's drying, we're going to work on her little clothes here, this little jumper that she's got on. And this one is kind of a dark red. You can make it, some people like more of a blue red, some people like a warmer red. It's up to you, whatever color you want to do. I'm going to do a cad red. So I'm just going to put some of that here. And I'm going to water it down a bit. And I'm just going to put a base coat all over it. But when I get down to this part, I'm going to fade it out. Just make sure you go along the lines properly. So you do want to recognize that it's an arm. I'm just going to put some color into the background here and fade it out. And then just paint her in wherever you see her little shirt and sleeves. Don't do the hat yet though. Do that part in a minute. That's her little sleeve in there. Just take some water and let it soak into the background so you don't have any hard lines. It just slowly disappears. Gradually goes into the background. Okay. So now we can do the hat part. Same way, just put some in between the leaves. Your face should be dry enough that you don't have to worry about the edge, but if your face is still wet, then don't paint near that because it will bleed into your face. That's not fun. So it's just a very, very transparent coat. Okay, and the hat the same way, the top of the hat. So it's just right up here. And we'll put another coat on, more shadows and highlights. Okay, so there's her little hat. Now you can take a dryer and dry that up. Now I'm going to make a little bit of a darker color of skin tone, so I'm taking that sienna again. I can take some of this red here and just darken it up a little bit, and a little bit of the blue on my tip of my brush. Darken it. It's kind of a muddy color looking. That's going to be part of my skin shading. So I like to do shading gradually, not with one big swoop. Maybe I'll make it a little bit more thicker. Let's see. That's better. A little darker. Want just the right color. It's kind of a brownish red. So I'm going to go and emphasize those really dark areas. So it was right along the chin line again. Just as it goes up the ear and around the ear. And then down this part of her neck. Make it a little bit bigger. And then take a clean brush. You want a soft, gradual look to the shading along her neck. Don't want a line per se. So just a nice gradual . Same with up here. Want it gradual. Just walk it up. And there's that little crescent shaped right there. Kind of goes to the corner of her ear, top of her ear. And then just soften the edge. I would say that's the most important part of doing these, is softening the edges. A little more. her lip. Soften it. It's fairly dark under here too. We're probably going to go a few times under her chin and neck. This does dry so light, that's the only thing. Just going to dab a little bit so it stays a little bit more. Okay. Around her nose again. And her lip. Soften the edge. And then around the eye, it's always darker around the eye here, on the inside of the eye. Just go along that line that's in the print. And right here, just a smidge. And just walk it out a little bit. Her ear, it's quite dark in there. We'll probably have to get a little bit darker. I'm running out of paint again. It's really hard to decide how much paint, at least it is for me. Okay, what did I use? A smidgen of blue and some red. A bit thicker. Soften it. Right in here. Be shadowed kind of by the hat. Soften the edges. You can add and take away with your brush. Okay, I'm going to let that dry a bit. Add a little bit more sienna to that mix and a little bit more red just to give a little more rosy effect. Maybe a little yellow. Okay. I'm going to put some brown with that just to darken this up a little bit. So if you have some burnt umber, add that to your mix to darken it. We'll do that with the inside of the ear here. Just darken this inside of the ear because it is quite dark. I might just go with a bit, just pure umber. It is quite dark there. If you've got too much, you just take a clean brush, damp brush, and you just lift it. And we want a little bit of that pinky color along this top part of her ear here. It's a little bit pale. And just blend the edge a little bit. And then dark, dark. So I'm going to take that umber color again. I want it fairly dark. And just where that leaf is overlapping the ear, it's fairly dark space in there. Just separates what's ear and what's the space between. And then just a tad down the line there. And clean this up a little bit. Any hard lines? Another paper towel. You can just remove some of that on the cheek just by putting a little bit of wet paint, water on. Let it soak in a little bit and then just remove it with your napkin or whatever you're using. And it'll brighten it up a little bit. And I'm going to take that umber again and put more in here. Just needed a little bit more dark. Okay, now I'm going to take that pinky, more pinky, darker medium pink, I guess you could say, and just around her nostril here, you want to put some of that in there, going to the lip and the inside of her nostril. Put a little bit there, and the lip. It's fairly dark. I take that right down around to that little, whatever you call it, and a little bit under there where her double chin is. Maybe a smidge there. And around that pearl, there'll be a little bit of a shadow. And I'm just taking a clean brush. Clean that or walk it out a little bit. Maybe a little bit more of that in her eye too. Darken that eye part. It's just a little bit darker. Just make sure you soften those edges though. I would say that's the main thing that I look at. Those edges have to be soft. Now I'm going to put a little more in the very tops of those where the hat meets the skin, just to make it a little bit darker. Let it. You kind of go back and forth because by the time it dries, it's darkened or it's too light, or you gotta. That's why I only do a little bit at a time, because you never know what you're gonna get. I'll put some blue with that now. That'll gray it down a little bit. Just this will be a little bit more on the gray side here. And when you add blue to this mix, it kind of darkens it. That's how a lot of people do their blacks. And you can add some more right in there along that. I'm going to add some more to that, I think. Make it really dark. It's kind of like a slate blue color. But it's a really good color for shadows and skin. You don't need a lot, just a bit. In the really darkest areas. I'm just going to clean this up a little bit, soften it. And with this, bring it out a little. Doesn't need a lot. So it's kind of just look at it, see where you think you need some extra. Maybe a little under here. This is kind of her shadow from the leaf. So I'm just going to soften that a little bit along the edge here. So it's clean water on my brush, and I'm just brushing it back and forth to soften the edge. And you can take some of that blue and right in here add some of that blue in there. That blue mixture that turned gray. It's usually around your eyes, your nose sometimes. You'll have a bluish tinge to your skin. Let's put some of that in around her nose here. Her lip. Take some out if you want a little bit more highlight, just rub it. Either use your cloth or you can take it off with a clean brush. So let's see. That. A little bit more in here. That's actually a little bit darker in here. right from her eyebrow, comes down along her face to about here. And this can be a bit darker again. It's just a little bit. Look at your reference to see, you know, how much color is on. It might be a lot darker than you think. Blue, a little bit of red. There. But the trick about doing these is contrast. If there's not enough contrast, then it doesn't, it looks very flat. She's got quite a bit of dark eyelashes. And those are going to be more blackish. So we want kind of a black instead of a brown in the crease here. And in the, well, we'll use pen to it's very hard to get a very small line, especially for the eyelashes and stuff. I want a little bit of that lid showing, so take some of that out. Like that. And that inner nostril, just on the top part of her nostril, just put a little bit of that dark, 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 almost black in there. It should be darker. Blue. There. Just on the top part. Very dark. Alright, we'll leave her skin for now, and we'll work on the leaves. Now the leaves are holly leaves, and what I did was I took a nice bright green, so I had light leaf green here by Da Vinci, I think it was. And I just did a complete coat of that leaf green over top of all of the leaves. So now what I want to do is I want to get a little bit of a a medium green. So I have the Winsor Newton Permanent Sap Green, I believe it's called. So it's a nice green, medium green. And what I want to do is I want to paint in between these veins. So I want to leave a vein color of that bright green. So you're basically painting squares around that bright green vein. So do the best you can. If you cover it, don't panic. We can always put gouache with that green color back on. This is a good exercise to do, just to learn how to use your watercolor brushes in more detailed. There. Okay, there's the second coat of the leaves. So as that's drying, we can continue on to, let's finish the hair, I guess, or not the hair, the face. So we have the eyebrows, and they're just the brownish color. And I just take the tip of my brush and just do a few little strokes so that it's kind of patchy. And there's hardly any on the other side. It's just a very minuscule spot. She does have a little funny kind of little lip here that you can darken. Just on where it meets the other one. Just darken that a little bit. Because we're going to lighten parts of it, but some of it needs to be darker, like on the bottom part. Kind of like that. And now I'm going to take my fine, this is a number 2 rosemary spotter brush, and I'm going to use that burnt umber color, maybe mix a little bit of that bluish purple color. I want it fairly dark because I'm going to use it for this little crease around the eye. Just want it a little bit darker. And where the eyeball and the eyelashes meet, it's also darker, but it's a very thin line. So just go around the edge like that. And this one is just around the very bottom, just slightly. And the eyeball just at the top, it just goes around slightly. Almost halfway, I guess you could say. I like that. So it kind of meets the eye, I guess. Okay. Now we want to do a little bit of the iris, and depending on, you know, what color you want to make it, I made mine kind of a purpley blue color, so I'm just going to use this cerulean blue, but I don't want it blue, so I mixed some of that color that we had for shading into it, so it's kind of a grayish blue. And I want to color the whole part of the iris. Do that. So it'll look like that when you're done. So we have to let it dry. We can put a little bit of shade on this pearl here. I'm just going to use some of that muddy color just around the bottom, halfway up. That's not enough. Just go around that bottom part of the pearl. Now, let's see what else. This is dry. Let's do a little bit of work on the clothes and the hat. So I used cadmium red, so I'm going to make up a bit of that again, but I want it more on the, I want it purpley, more on the burgundy side, I guess you could say. And the cad red, I'm going to add a little bit of that cerulean to it, just to purple it up a bit, just a smidge. I don't want it purple though. And then I'm going to go underneath this leaf here and the bell, and this leaf, and in here. This will be fairly dark in here. It's her side and underneath the leaf, so it's going to be dark. This part of the leaf, the underneath this part, and under her arm, so right here along her side, and just a bit under the arm, and then bring where the elbow is, and the inner part of the elbow, just bring it across like this, and then a bit underneath. Now this is going to be dark, this area here, so you can put that in underneath the pom-pom of her hat. I don't have to get too crazy with it. And I like to just clean it up a little bit, soften it maybe. Clean brush. Bring it out a little. And do the same for your hat. So you see the little creases, these lines, so just take your brush and go up flick it up, go from this part, flick it down. So wherever you have these little creases, just add a little bit of the dark to it. And underneath the leaves, that can be really dark. And then along the side a bit, just a smidgen. And then up here, where the crease is, where it's folded over, that can be dark. And in here, and I like to put a little bit along here. And just sweep it up a little bit with a clean brush. Doesn't have to be really, you can have texture in there because it's a fur, velvet, whatever. See, it's going to have texture, so don't worry about having smooth gradation. There wouldn't be much because it is and you can, what I did was just remove some at the highest points where you would think that the highlight would be. Just remove some with a clean brush. So the folds would it be a little bit lighter on the top. Maybe a little lighter right here. There. All right. All right, let's see. Let's continue on with the eyes. Now the eyes, if you look at your reference photo, you'll see a little reflection. So it's not a solid black area, it's kind of grayish looking. So I want you to make a black. If you have a black, you can use a black. There's a Payne's gray will work. And add some red to it, and it'll give you a nice dark color. Just have to play with it a little bit. Get the right consistency. And then on the left one, it's darkest around the edge the left edge of it. Now I didn't paint all of it, just half of it. And this one, the same thing on the left edge. Let's get a point, and it's fairly dark on the top, and then just the left edge. The top part's a little darker. Like that. Take too much up there. And then a little bit around the outer edge too. It's darker. I'm gonna have to use my smaller brush. Make sure there's no water seeping off of it when you're doing this. So just around the very edge it's darker. And you only see it right here, right on the corner there. That one's tricky. You have to really watch how much you put on. But before it dries, you can take some off. There. Okay, so we'll let that dry. And while that's drying, we'll do the fur. So that one was basically a little bit of cerulean blue with a dab of raw umber, or burnt umber, sorry. It's kind of a gray. And I just went around the bottom, dabbed it. Here and there, because it's furry, so you'll have texture. It'll be darker around the leaves, and a little bit in here. The bottom will be quite a bit darker because it's in shadow. Don't forget this part here, it'll be actually dark because it's in shadow. Just put some dabs in, and then the bottom part of this will be more of a shadow than the top part. So just dabs, watered down. You can actually just put some dirty water on even. And then take your brush and remove parts. Like that. Let it dry, and we'll come back to that to add some gouache on it. And a little bit of that dirty water, actually, just in the white of her eye is a good idea, because your whites of the eye aren't white. So if you want to add a little bit to that, that works too. So we may as well do the holly, the berries on the holly on her hat, and just use some of that cad red that I had and put a base coat on, watery. And I'm just going to use the gouache to make the highlight, so it's easier. Wherever they're meeting, it'll be darker, so I'm just adding a little bit more on the bottoms. Just dabbing. And I'll let it dry that way. Okay, so let's dry that up. So the berries are usually a little bit on the, there's a little bit of orangey color to them. So I like to add a little bit of orange as a glaze, I guess, just to brighten those up a little bit. Gives them a little bit of a different color than your hat. So I just go right over top of what I have. I can add more dark on the bottom again. But I added a bit of that orange to the cad red. So it's going to give me another different color. And then I can actually, on the top parts, just remove a little bit with a dry, damp brush. Like that. And dry that. Okay. Now with her mouth here, I'm going to take some clean water and I'm just going to scrub right here just to take some of that brown off. And right here. And just a smidgen right there. Okay. And then with my brush again, I'm going to kind of get that bluey purple color. So I have some of it here, it's watered down. And under her nose you want a little bit of that blue color as a shadow. And a little bit more in her eye here, I think. Just needed it. More of a shadow. There. Okay, so the bells, you can make them whatever you want. I had some rose gold here, and all I did was painted the whole thing rose gold. And where all the little sections are will be black, like these little dots underneath. That's where it jingles from. So you don't have to paint those, just leave them. You can paint yours silver, gold, white, whatever. It's up to you. think that's it. All right. So let's see. Let's continue our leaves here. What I like to do is make a little bit of a darker outline on the leaves. So I added a little bit darker, so this Daniel Smith Green Apatite will work, or you could add a little bit of red to your green. That'll green it down, or gray it down and darken it. And I just go around the edge with it. Let's see, I'd have to thicken mine up a little. Maybe on the corners might have a little bit more darkness. Around the bells, you might want them to be a little darker. I'm not going to do that right now because I just painted those. I don't want it to run. The corners where the veins meet, just a little bit darker. They usually have a little bit of a longer spike on the ends of the leaves too. See, maybe you could add that here. I think that was darker. I can take my white Posca, or not Posca, white gouache. You could use white acrylic, it'll work the same way. And I'm just going to put some highlights in areas. So I want a highlight in the eyes. So just a little bit on my brush here. Let's make a point. And just put the highlight where you see it on the, so there's kind of three here. One's bigger than the other. And then there's one right here. And with this eye here, there's actually a highlight on the eyeball and the nose too, but we're gonna do those with pen because they're very precise, and the lip. So we'll put a little highlight on the top of the bells, just a smidge, and along the center of the bell, that rib. Okay, and then a little bit on the, where that highlight that we took out, just put a little swift like that. Now with your brush, wipe most of it off and then just drag it down those highlight areas a little bit. So dry brush, just a few areas. Same with on her sleeves here, just a few areas where it's lighter. I know it's scary, but okay. Now if you have a Deerfoot stippler, something like this, you can take the gouache and put it in, pounce it off, and then start pouncing on the ball. That's how I made my fluffy ball. You can go off the edges if you don't want some of those marks. If you can't get the marks off, just go past it with your brush. They're fuzzy, so that's fine if they're. And then do the same with up here too. And I stick to the white areas that are already white. If you want to get rid of those lines, you can do that. You can put a few on the bottom, but don't do the whole like a row, because then it kind of doesn't look right. Kind of looks fake. But you do want it kind of fuzzy looking. And a few on the bottom here, under her hat. And then you also use some of your color to put some more shadow in there. Mostly on the bottom though. In the center there might be a few, but not a lot. And I just mix my paint with my watercolor, my gouache with watercolor. There'll be a few more in the just gives it a little bit. And you can go back and forth until you like it. That's what I typically do. There. Okay. Now that this is dry here, let's darken that even more. So I'm going to take that purpley blue color, a small paintbrush, and I'm just going to go along here where they're kind of meeting and darken that, kind of shadow it. So be very dark in there, and just on the very bottom there would be a shadow. And before it dries, you can walk it out. So it's fairly dark in there. Okay. All right, now let's get if you have a white marker, a fine white marker though, get that out. A white, I have a Posca. She has these highlights from the lights she's looking at on her nose, and her lips. And it's from the top of her little nose here. And the top of her lip. And around her lip. Chin. A little and then right in here, her eye, go into her eyebrow. But just put your finger on it so it's not too bright. And then I'm going to put a little line in between here and put my finger on it. And then her eyeball. And her eyeball, there's part of her lashes here, you'll see that, but it's just where the blue is, meeting that dark area. There's a white mark. Okay? And if these aren't bright enough, you can always brighten these up. I like to put a little bit down some of the center veins of the holly because they are actually shiny, the holly. So we're going to take some white and shine them up a little bit too with a dry brush. And this is when you're going to need just a straight, flat, fairly small. You don't want it too wide. And get your, I have some on the side here, some on your brush, and then just in the center, just here and there, I just dry brush a little bit of this on. You don't have to do the whole thing, but just gives it a little extra something. Let's see, some more. You want it dry brushed though. Because it is shiny usually. Just a bit. And there's also shine on her ear over here. Put a little line there. And if you need to, you can also put some on her, a little bit here on that. Where else? Oh, on our neck too, right here. There we go. All right, now we're going to get a fine liner. I use the microns. You can use a fine line pen if you're not going to do any more watercolor on it. Oh, here it is. This one is a 5. I would do a 3 if you have it. You can use a 5, but I like a really fine looking line. Let's see what this one is. It's a 5. There's a 3. Okay. It's just a finer line. And you'll notice on the how her eyelashes go. So they go up and around halfway. So really pay attention to how those eyelashes are placed. And they're curved. They're not straight. They're curved. So they're tiny where the iris part just starts. They're very small, and I'm just going to curve them and follow that line. And as I get to the top, I make them bigger. Now you want to also group them. You don't want them all separate. Same with this one. There. And this is when you can do any kind of fine work. I like to use it for extending the crease a little bit, or shading. Maybe you didn't get enough darkness in the around the eye. If your eyeball isn't shaped quite the way you want it, what's that? Then you can fix that up a little bit. Needs to be a little bit off. I think it looks okay though. Yeah. Inside her nose is a little bit, maybe. And where her mouth is closed, I like it darker. Usually, just gives it a little bit more. And maybe in here, just a bit. I could actually add a little bit more I think I might add a bit here and just smudge it. Smudge it. Alright, so I think that's it for that part. Actually, bring this down. That looks good. Okay. So now the bokeh effect. Now what I do is I find a stencil brush or your Deerfoot stippler, and if you have any stencils that have round circles, oh gosh, I didn't bring those out. Now I gotta find them. Oh, here it is. So this is the one I use here. It's got a variation of stencils. I don't know who makes this. It's not on here. So the idea is not to make them uniform or evenly spaced. Bokehs are usually bunched up in different colors. So what I do is I take my stencil and I'll start off, well, I'm not going to go really big. Let's start off with this one here. And I take I wet my brush Don't have it sopping wet though. And go around in a circle. Scrub. Don't scrub too hard though. She'll end up peeling the paper. And then you just pat. Do it again. Pat. And it removes the paint for your first layer. Now you will get a little bit of peeling, or pilling, I guess you call it. But you want to be able to get, not right down to white, but you want a lighter color than what was there. So then I take another size and do another one. Pat. Rinse your brush because it gets paint color on it. So if you rinse it, it cleans the paint color. Otherwise you just putting the paint color back in. There. So you're removing the paint. Okay. Now, what I did was, once I got some of these put in, then I take my Posca, or my paint again, my gouache, this is poster paint, and a wet brush, and I want only a few, but some, I take paint, let's try that again. Start from the middle and work out. Don't have too much paint on your brush though, because it'll go underneath. You kind of want to do that over top some areas, not like right over the face or anything, but just do a few so that they're more bright. So maybe I would want, say, this one here. Just have to be careful not to have too much water on your brush or it'll seep. Now I like overlapping the brighter ones on some of the other ones. It makes them look like they're in front, and they're more bright ones that are in front. So I can brighten these up more. So let's, you have to wait till they're dry though. Let's see. So I want to make clusters, so I'm going to cluster that one, maybe a few more down here. I don't want them evenly spaced because then it looks fake. maybe one right here. And one here. Oop, that one didn't work out. You want to make sure they're round, because they don't look right if they're not round. You could actually use your brush too. I've seen that done. So you just take your brush and go around in a circle. See. Make this one brighter. And this one brighter. And I'm going to make this one brighter. I don't like the way it turned out. You could also use a sponge. Oh, that one didn't turn out again. That one's saying, I do not like being here. Okay. And I think I need one more in here. So maybe right here. There. I think this one needs to be brighter. You can add more and more and more and more. Do whatever you want. Add, take away. Okay. So the last thing that I did also was I added snow. And I just got some kind of bristle brush, some gouache, wet my brush a little bit. And you can cover your face up if you don't want anything on there. And just splatter. And then you can always wipe up bigger areas that you don't like. It's easy enough. There. And there she is. She's done. So I hope you'll give it a try. I know it's looks daunting, but it's something you have to work at, I must admit. But I think you'll enjoy it when it's done. And you'll be proud of it. Sometimes it might take 2 or 3 times. But just try it. That's the main thing. Try and do it and see what you can do. And once you start getting used to doing skin and that type of thing, it's endless what you can do. Have a great day, everybody. Bye for now.